You've entered Bookstorm with Kristen Civiletto and me, Chris Storm. This is a podcast devoted to best-selling books that matter, books that make a difference. We're diving down deep with beloved authors about their stories. We're exposing hot-button topics and heartfelt themes, the issues that affect each of us in our own lives, as siblings, parents, partners, friends, as human beings. We're braving new ideas, fresh thoughts, hard lessons, and important truths. Those kinds of things that stay with us long after we turn the last page and close the book. Well, welcome back to Bookstorm Podcast, book lovers. Kristen and I are super excited about who we have with us here today. It's a repeat guest on Bookstorm, one of our very favorite authors. Welcome to Robert Dugoni.
Thank you very much. It's a very kind introduction. I appreciate it.
Well, we're excited because you're back with another book in the Kira Dugan series, Beyond a Reasonable Doubt. I'm going to show the cover there for our YouTube viewers. It was unbelievable. Could not put it down. Page turner. Highly recommend this novel. Now, before we get going, as you know, I like to tell our listeners a little bit about your bio because it's very interesting. And you got some great acclamations here that are very hard-earned and well-deserved. So for those of you who might not know all of this, Robert Dugoni is a critically acclaimed, now wait for it, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, and #1 Amazon best-selling author with 9 million viewers worldwide. You may know him right away because of his novel, The Extraordinary Life of Sam Hell, that we all loved. It was Suspense Magazine Book of the Year. But he also has other series. We've got the Tracy Crosswhite, we have the David Sloan, we have Charles Jenkins series. And now we're very happy that we have, I think you're calling this a new series, am I right? The Kira Dugan series?
Yeah, I am. Yeah. In fact, I'm typing the last page of the third book in the series. So,
Yay! We're
Awesome.
happy to hear that. Hugely happy. Now, I can't let it go without saying that you also are the recipient of the Nancy Pearl Award for Fiction, 3-time winner of Friends of Mystery Spotted Owl, finalist for the International Thrill Award, Harper Lee Prize for Legal Fiction, Silver Falcon, Mystery Writers, Edgar Award, and Kirkus Reviews, and more. I got to stop there. Your books are sold in 25 countries, more than 30 languages, and I'm only going to quote, there's a lot of endorsements here, but I'm going to quote Lisa Scottolini because she's a friend of Bookstorm. She's been on our show, I think at least 2 times. Am I right, Kristen?
That's right.
And Lisa says, I adore Robert Dugoni's legal thrillers. This is the best one yet. I loved Kira Dugan's strength and her heart, which shines through the pages, and I rooted for her every step of the way. Yes, Lisa, so did we, and we're very happy that we have Robert here with us today to dive down deep. Welcome.
thank you very much. Lisa's a really good person.
She is.
Yeah, I was very, very grateful because she's a lawyer too. So, I mean, I was very grateful to get that blurb from her. She's clearly, she knows what it's like to be in the trenches.
She sure is. She's an excellent writer. She's also very funny, by the way. We
She's
always have a
very funny.
lot of laughs when she comes on it. Everything gets amped up.
Yeah.
And we just thoroughly enjoy her. But yeah, that's a good endorsement right there.
Well, Robert, as Chris mentioned, we're here to talk about your newest thriller, Beyond a Reasonable Doubt. And we loved this book. I want to tell our listeners, without giving away any spoilers, which is kind of hard, just a bit about the background of what's happening so they can kind of follow along in our discussion. And we'd love it if you wanted to add anything, of course, at the end.
Okay.
Now, in the story, this is the second Kira Dugan story in that series. And she is a criminal defense attorney. She is now with her father's firm. He's known as the Irish Brawler, but Patsy is he's got a fantastic reputation as an attorney. And the two of them have a lot to navigate in their relationship. This is a new role for her. And now in this story, she's taking more of a lead counsel, leading the firm type role. A new client comes to the firm, and this is Jenna Bernstein. Now, she is the former CEO of a very controversial biotech company. And 5 years before, she had been accused of murdering her former partner and lover. And guess who defended her? Patsy Dugan. She comes back to the firm now because she's being accused of another crime, another murder. And Jenna has some mixed feelings. She knows Jenna from the past. They grew up together. I don't want to necessarily say they were good friends. They might be frenemies, but Jenna has had a front row view of some of the things that Jenna has done in the past. So Kira knows that she is a manipulator, a liar. But now with this new case, there's a lot of evidence. It's circumstantial, but it kind of looks bad. But Jenna feels like this might be a case to take on because she's got some, you know, some concerns that maybe an innocent person may be convicted. But she's also worried, what if a murderer goes free? So as this investigation unfolds, we see Jenna or Akira navigating this complicated case, but also a complicated relationship with her father. Did you want to add anything to that background?
No, I think that was fantastic. It's a book that it has a lot of characters that I think people will identify with. I mean, I think we've all come across Jenna Bernsteins in our lives, the narcissistic, sociopathic individuals, and they're not all criminals. I mean, because somebody is sociopathic or narcissistic doesn't mean they're psychopathic, but it doesn't make them any easier to deal with. So yeah, no, that was great. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we loved her. We loved all the characters. I mean, even the ones we love to hate. Of course, this is a courtroom novel, and there's a lot of courtroom dynamics that the reader can see. As me being not a lawyer, I really liked this line, and I'm going to quote: "Attorneys limit the information provided to their experts all the time to direct the flow of their investigation and opinions and conclusions towards what they need." Wow, but of course they do. It struck the reader as a little bit of a real life strategy as well. Okay, attorneys, but all of us in life, we look for a certain answer. We do everything to push towards that result, that conclusion, including we refuse to look at all of the truths if it doesn't align with our goal. So I had to ask you, as the writer of this, for Kira, for Patsy, maybe even Jenna Bernstein and all of us, how does this strategy aid our cause? But it also strikes the reader that it might set us up for possible disaster.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was a civil litigator, and I can remember being in meetings with experts, and the expert would take a pen out, and an attorney in the room would say, "You're not to take any notes. I'll tell you when to take notes," because notes are discoverable. And they can, the other side can get them if you disclose that expert as somebody that you're going to use. Now, in the criminal situation, it's a little bit different. They are obligated under the Brady rule that if they have an exculpatory expert, so somebody comes and says, "No, this DNA does not match the defendant," and they have to disclose that. They have to turn that over. So attorneys are very cautious about the experts they use and what information they provide to the expert, which is discoverable, and what information they get from the expert, which is discoverable. And it does conflict a lot with, what we would love to believe is a search for the truth, right? Let's get to the bottom line. Let's find the truth. And part of that reason is because just the way, for instance, the criminal justice system is set up, police and prosecutors are judged by, do they get an arrest, and is there a conviction? And if it's one of those horrific crimes, that's what the public wants, is they want somebody to be held accountable. They want justice. The problem is, in that desire to get a conviction, in that desire to improve their professional career, is the person really guilty? Did the person really commit the crime? And, too often we see things like the Innocent Project every year, finding evidence that these people that have been put away for decades were really innocent. And that's the tragedy behind it. Now, I say that, but I also, I'm a proponent of the police. I'm a proponent of the prosecutor's office. And I believe that, 99% of the time they're doing their job and they're doing it well. But I don't write about those times because nobody wants to read about that, right? They want to read about the unusual. They want to read about the possible injustice. They want to read about, the big crime and that kind of thing. So, as a writer, that's what I look for. As a writer, I look for that one-off case where it's doesn't fit the tried and true. What the police officers have told me is a softball, right? It's an easy case. They show up, there's a person standing there, the gun's at his feet, and there's another person dead. It's a softball. That's not the cases that I want to write about. That's not the cases that most readers want to read about.
As readers, we all know that there are dynamics and tactics inside the courtroom. Almost you could translate that to any career. People who want to further their own personal career will maybe take some side steps. They get lost in their own fame, and it could have to do with money. It just could have to do with notoriety. Yes, you're right. It makes for a really great story. But what also makes for a great story is this character, Kira Dugan, because of her youthful, I'm not even going to say naivety, although sometimes it is a little bit, her youthful belief in justice, her desire to do the right thing. I mean, that's what I think we love about her. So you've got a whole mix of all kinds of evil and manipulation and lies and smoke and mirrors going on. And then we still have Kira Dugan. Thank you for writing her.
Yeah, she's an interesting character. When Gracie Doyle, my editor over at Thomas and Mercer, said we would like you to, do a legal thriller series. I had done one with the David Sloan series, but I had gotten away from it because legal thrillers sort of tapered out a little bit. What I said to Gracie was, I'll do it, but I want to do it my way. I want it to be different than some of the other legal thriller series that are out there, in that I want to have police procedural aspects and I want to have family dynamics. Because one of the things I will never forget as a lawyer is working with a woman, an attorney, who we were trying a big case, and she was just really under a lot of pressure. And I remember walking into her office, and this was, back in the 80s or 90s, and saying, what can I do to help you? I mean, what can I do to take some of this off your plate? And she looked at me and she said, right now, I'm just trying to figure out what I'm going to cook for dinner for my family. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you have got to be kidding me. But it was a very real moment for me to recognize that, life goes on. And not every day you get up is going to be your best day. And you don't just get to go to court and just be a lawyer. It might be the day that your kid gets in trouble at school. It might be the day that you're supposed to, build them a boat for the soapbox derby. I had that happen to me one time, taking a deposition, and one of the attorneys in the room is working on a car. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he said, oh, my son's soapbox derby is tonight, and I forgot to make the car. Family dynamics are very real for everyone, including lawyers. And I think sometimes we forget, when we think of a lawyer or we think of a doctor, we always think of them in the hospital. We always think of them operating. They're human beings. And so they have the same frailties. They have the same personality disorders that we all have. And we just don't always see it.
So true.
Well said. I want to ask you about something that Kira's father said to her, because I think this is another truism. He said, I find that it was defending the difficult cases that I learned the most about myself, who I was as an attorney and as a person. And throughout this story, we see where Kira is challenged over and over again by that statement. And at one point, she begins to deal with some of the complicated feelings of disappointment that she has towards her father, particularly as he struggled with addiction throughout her life. So I wanted to ask you, what is it about these difficult cases that perhaps challenge us to grow in ways we didn't expect?
Yeah, and I think for the readers, it doesn't necessarily have to be, difficult cases, but really difficult moments in our lives.
Yeah.
How do we meet those challenges that we all have in our lives, right? Do we shy away from them? Do we ignore them? Do we fear them? Or do we step up? Do we step up and take on that challenge? Not everybody does. Not everybody does. All of us are a lot different. And I think at some point we all have to self-analyze, who we are and what we do. And can we meet that challenge? Can we step up? I've had situations in my life where one of my kids, something will come up and uh, I have to step up. I have to be the person that makes the phone call and says, this is not appropriate, and it's difficult. It's very difficult because I don't think any of us who are not sociopathic, I don't think we court uh, challenge the difficult moments in our lives. I think, we'd all love to have our life go along, swimmingly and all's great, but that's not reality either. So, in Kira's situation, what I did was I just magnified a lot of those things. Her father's an alcoholic. Her siblings are dysfunctional. She had a bad relationship because she made a poor choice. She's paying for that price now. She lives alone. She goes home to an empty house. She goes home and eats dinner by herself. She used to have a glass of Dewar's scotch because, it kind of took the edge off. It's a lonely existence. And, she's smart enough and she's intuitive enough to realize this isn't what life is supposed to be. You're not supposed to just get up and go to work every day and then come home and be alone. But it is her life at that moment. Now, that was my life for a long time. I had dated someone for a number of years, and we both came to the conclusion that it wasn't going to work. Wasn't something that was gonna. So I lived on my own in San Francisco for a number of years, and I went to work every day, and I devoted my life really to my job as a lawyer. I dated, but there was nobody that I was really seriously interested in. And it was a lonely existence. And so I filled those moments with things like theater in San Francisco and sitting down and maybe trying to write, a novel, which, as as a lawyer, it's pretty almost impossible when you're trying to practice law. But it's reality for so many of us. And it provided a lot of epiphanies for me about myself, who I was and what I was capable of and what I wanted in life.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. You really highlighted something important for us all to think about, and that is oftentimes we view conflict and challenges as negative things, but they can be very positive things as well because you can grow in your maturity, your understanding, maybe change some things about yourself that you hadn't recognized before until you were squeezed into a circumstance like Kira was, and
Yeah.
all of your characters actually. So
Yeah.
I appreciate what you said. Thank you.
It's I'm a man that deals with anxiety, and I talk about it very openly and very freely because I think it's important that we don't try to hide it because everybody is dealing with something. And I've come to learn, I've come to realize that the past is the past. We can't change it.
Yeah.
And the future hasn't happened yet. And so anticipating it is what causes our anxiety. And a lot of times I can say that what was causing me anxiety turned out to be nothing.
Yeah.
I'm worried that, the car isn't going to start and I'm not going to make it to work on time for it, throw it out, right? And then you go out there and the car turns over.
Yeah.
You're worried that you're going to miss your plane at the airport. Well, I've probably flown 1,000 times in my life and I've never missed a plane, And so living in the present, I think, is something that is really hard to do. I think people that have mastered that ability to stay in the moment, I admire them, because I think it's something that allows them to then be their best in that moment.
Yes. That's wisdom right there. I think we can all relate to it. I always say, I think 90% of the things that we worry about never even happen.
Yeah.
And you're right. And especially, I think it's like trying to go to sleep at night. As a mom and a grandmother now, I'm not even worried about myself so much. It's can I keep all these other people alive?
Yeah. 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 No, I mean, and again, I think that's part of what we've been talking about, which is, as we get old, as we get older, we do change, our priorities do change, but that's what I want my characters to have. I want my characters to go through those moments that we all go through in life. Is this the right person for me? Am I supposed to be fighting this hard for a relationship, or is it supposed to be easier than this? I mean, what's my life? Kira's in a situation where she has feelings for one of the violent crimes detectives, and she knows he has feelings for her, Frank Rossi. Well, where can that go? She's a defense attorney now, and he's the guy that's going to try to put her client in prison. So where does that, can they make that work? It sure doesn't seem like it, but it's a reality. And that's the kind of thing that I'm trying to capture in my stories. Is I want people to read my books and say, is this a true story? I mean, does this really happen? Yeah. I wanted to touch them in that place inside all of them where they can say, I can relate to this.
Mm-hmm. You did it, because that's why we love these characters so much, including, I have to dive down into this wonderful character, Jenna Bernstein. We love to hate her. We just do. It's like you said, we all knew somebody, especially in middle school and high school, the bully, the liar, the manipulator, people who have to be at the center of attention, who must succeed at all cost. Okay, let's call it a sociopathic personality. And how do we deal with it? So we see Kira, she agrees to defend Jenna, the girl who bullied her and all the other girls in school. And I had to ask you, how does Kira and all of us in the real world separate an incident, in this case, a crime, from our prejudices against the character? Or maybe we can't completely.
Yeah, I don't know that we can completely. I mean, I have spoken to criminal defense lawyers who have represented really reprehensible people. I mean, horrific people. And I think all of us ask ourselves, how can somebody defend that person? There was a multiple homicides here in the Northwest, up in Idaho, and for a long time, no one was arrested, and the people were really getting after the police department, small Idaho police department, basically saying they were completely incompetent. They weren't. They knew who it was. They had very strong idea who did it, and they were just waiting to get all the evidence so that they would have enough for probable cause and everything else. And they arrested this guy. And all indications are that this guy just decided one night to go and brutally murder 4 or 5 college students. I mean, that's Charles Manson stuff, right? So how do you walk into a courtroom and defend that person? How do you put that aside, right? Interestingly, I spoke to a prison guard at San Quentin that knew Charles Manson. He called him Charlie.
Wow.
And our impression of Charles Manson is he's this crazy, complete, total loon. And this guy said to me, he said, he's not crazy. He's as sane as you or me. He gets a little nuts because he's a meth head. He's a meth addict, I guess. But he said he's as sane as you and me, right? And that may be even more scary.
Yeah.
And what this criminal defense attorney said to me about representing these reprehensible people that have done these reprehensible crimes is, it's not his job to get them off. It's his job to ensure that the prosecution and the police follow the Constitution, that all the rights that we are all guaranteed in the Constitution are given to even the most reprehensible. Yeah. Because if they're not, then all of us are in trouble, right? And so that's his job, is to ensure that they follow the letter of the law in order to convict this person. And he had, I think he told me, 30 capital murder cases, and not one of his clients was ever given the death penalty. And that he considered a victory. They were given life in prison. They were guilty, and they're never getting out, but they weren't put to death. That was his job. And he did it well. He's a writer. His name's Phil Margolin in Portland. And so that really stuck with me. And because I often ask the same question you just asked is, how do you separate the crime from the character? And how do you defend somebody that has been charged with such horrific crimes?
That makes sense. That makes sense to everyone. It's the logical conclusion. You're not guilty until after you're tried. So we can't assume it, and everyone gets the fair chance. I think that gives us, thank you for saying that, because it gives everybody a little bit more peace of mind about the entire process.
Yeah, it's not perfect, but you look at what's been happening in Russia, for instance, and the people that have been, arrested as, spies, and they have no rights over there. There is no rights over there. You see they're brought into these courtrooms, and it's just it's a joke. And so, I forget the quote, but there's a great quote out there that talks about that if the Constitution doesn't work for the most reprehensible, it doesn't work for any of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good.
Love it.
I want to ask you a final question about a great scene in the story. There's so many good scenes, but I just love this one. Kira is interviewing Dr. Talmadge, and she is a psychiatrist and a licensed clinical social worker. And Kira is really pressing her hard about sociopathic traits in Jenna. And she says to Dr. Talmadge, Jenna's aspiring to be a wealthy CEO of her own company would fit within the profile of a sociopath, wouldn't it? And Dr. Talmadge agrees, but then says, but so too is the profession of a lawyer.
Yeah.
Ouch. When we have personalities drawn to these hard charging professions, and we see this a lot, not just lawyers, but other people, is that something we should equip young people for as they move into these very high intensity professions?
Yeah, I don't know if we can. I don't know if we can. What I've been told is that a sociopathic person, it's a personality disorder, mm-hmm. and it's really not that treatable. So how do you tell someone not to press forward? You're a lawyer as well, and I can say without a doubt that in civil cases, I had cases against people who were sociopathic, and I had cases against lawyers who were sociopathic. And I know of lawyers that I worked with who I know are sociopathic because they were so driven not just to succeed, but to win. Yeah. They would do it at any cost. I saw a man take advantage of churches over and over and over again and get away with it. Yeah. How does somebody live with themselves? Well, because they're sociopathic. And a sociopath believes that they're smarter than everyone else. And because they're smarter than everyone else, they have the right to abuse those people because they're just too stupid to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so it's a personality trait that I was told by a psychiatrist when I was writing the David Sloan series. And I actually quoted her in the front of the book, and she said something to the effect of, because I said something, so how do you treat these people? And she looked at me like, oh, you poor naive young. And she said, oh no, you don't understand. There is no treatment. There is no drugs. There's only prisons.
Mm.
Wow.
And I just thought that was terrifying, really terrifying, because you can't change that person. And so we see it in daily life. The young man from Stanford University who started the Bitcoin, there are people that will tell you that there are other individuals that have started very famous companies that we all know that are probably sociopathic and narcissistic because of their behavior. Win at all costs, get out that first program before anybody else gets it out.
Yeah.
And down in Silicon Valley, which is what this case sort of talks a little bit about, the statement is true where they say fake it until you make it.
Yeah.
Well, I
Absolutely.
mean, you're basically going to people and you're saying, we are going to put this product out, and this product is going to do this, that, and the other thing. And and people are giving you money to do this, and you really haven't. You're not at that point yet, But it was a reality, and that reality came back to bite some of those companies very hard.
Yeah.
And there are people who are in prison for
That's
the fake it until you make it attitude.
That's exactly right. Well, Robert, as always, we love your insights. You have such a breadth of experience, and you bring that and you breathe that into all of your characters, even the
Thank
ones that we love to hate. So I just appreciate that so much about you, and that's why we love having you on the show.
Thank you.
Um, well, we're going to show our listeners and our viewers on YouTube one more beautiful view of this cover. And we just want to ask you real quick before you go, can you give us a clue of what's coming on next? I think you mentioned something earlier.
Yeah. So that book comes out. I've had a really busy year. I had a book come out in February, a book come out in April. That book's coming out in October. And then the next book is actually going to be another stand alone. And it's another literary novel. It's called Hold Strong. It's a World War II book, but it's a World War II story you've never heard before. It's a little bit of a cross between Broken and The Imitation Game. It's based on hours and hours and years of research. And I can say that because I wasn't the researcher. I was asked by two gentlemen that were trying to put this story together based upon all this research, if I would write the book. And I've never done this really before, but I decided to do it here because it's an incredible story. It's called Hold Strong, and that'll be out in January, followed by the next Tracy Crosswhite book, which is called A Deadly Draw. Tracy goes back home to her town in the North Cascades and gets more than she can bargain for. And then after that, as I mentioned earlier, I'm literally putting the final words on the page before I take off a week to go play golf in Ireland. And it'll go to my agent after I get off of the call with you. And that'll be the next Kira Dugan book, Kira 3. And it has a name, and hang on one second. It has a title. The title is going to be Her Cold Justice.
Oh, I love
Sounds
it.
great.
I love it.
So
Great.
there you have it.
Awesome.
You have been
Always
busy.
something.
Yes, and thank you so much for sharing that all with us. That is so exciting. We would love to have you come back, of course, in the future and talk about those stories. We'll keep an eye out for them. And in the meanwhile, listeners, you can find Robert Dugoni online, robertdugonibooks.com. He is also on Goodreads, on Pinterest, on YouTube, Facebook. You've got spots all over the place. You have a very engaging and active presence. So we're thankful that you came on the show, and we cannot wait to read the next one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Good to see you again.
You too.
Yes. Always so great to have Robert Dugoni on here. And, just listening to him talk about the thought that he puts into making his characters very realistic with real backgrounds and real hurdles and hurts and triumphs and everything that we can relate to as a reader. No wonder the books are so great. I thought
Yeah.
this was phenomenal. I'm going to say for our listeners, I just like Lisa Scottolini, I think this may be my favorite so far, but we've got more coming out. Kristen, I just really couldn't get over this whole, we did a lot of talk about narcissistic sociopathic personality. And, we have, for some reason, this topic has been trending lately. And I don't know if there are more narcissistic people and sociopathic people alive, or we're just taking notice. But like Robert, I have also heard that it is either a DNA in your genes or it is something that happened to you during your childhood. And I've heard either too much attention or no attention at all. So it's interesting that the psychiatrist or psychologist that he spoke to would say, no, there is no help. That was astounding.
Yeah, and maybe the answer is we equip ourselves to deal with people like that, and we equip our children to recognize those traits in others. And remember, we can only control what we do and how we react to people. And so I think we got to exert that control where we can. And that is making our own decisions and distancing ourselves or finding a new job or doing whatever's necessary.
Mhm.
Yeah, I thought that was very profound. Well,
Hashtag boundaries. Hashtag. I love the hashtag boundaries.
yeah,
That's where it falls into play. We didn't get to talk to him about this, but being that it is the political season right now, we're getting ready to vote, and just the news stories that have come up and our relationships with other countries around the world, I thought it was interesting in this book, amongst judges and lawyers, the secret deals, the favors, the promises made behind the scenes, the secret friendships, the boys club, whatever you want to call it. This exists not only in the legal world, but in every business. That
yeah.
sort of blew my mind.
Yeah, I agree. And like in every business, there's a lot of people who are doing their job well and are ethical and you hope are concerned about the bigger picture and the system being just. But you're always going to have those people who want the power and the upper hand. So it's hard to see that and hard to read it. It also makes for great fiction and great reading. So
And
I think
that's what we love about Kira Dugan, because
yeah.
in the midst of all of the mess, in comes someone young who believes in justice
Mhm.
and just wants to do the right thing. And it's a breath of fresh air for all of us. This
Yeah,
book is
no
going to be
doubt.
big.
Oh, it's great. Well, I want to tell our listeners about some other books that we have coming up. And we have so many authors coming on. I'm just going to give a little snippet. Shelley Noble, The Colony Club, Jessica Strasser, Catch You Later, Lori Frankel, Family, Linda Cohen Leugman, The Love Elixir of Augusta Stern, Jessica Hagdorn, Dog Eaters, Helena Eklund, Clever Little Thing, Victor Methos, The Silent Watcher, Graham Brown, writing for Clive Cussler, Desolation Code, Amal El Motar, The River Has Roots. And listeners, we want you to stay on the radar with us. We are on Facebook, we are on X. We've got a YouTube channel that is fantastic. You can see all of these authors. And we also have a website, bookstormpodcast.com, where you can access all of our podcasts. We'd love it if you continue to share our links because we've got all the great authors here. Until next time, listeners, one of the best ways to brave the storm is to dive down deep with life-changing fiction.